as you all know, the 5.2 update shifted the TTK by quite a large margin. Snipers and pistols were the only weapons fortunate enough to be left untouched, but the rest all had their TTK increased. And instead of just listing all the individual changes such as damage values, recoil and rate of fire, I thought I'd save you the time of experimenting with each gun by providing you with 3 of the best SMGs in the meta class. I've tried to order them as best as I can, but due to the lack of balance, or let's say due to the lack of a clear standout performer, all 3 are fairly competitive in one way or another. So hopefully at the end of this video you should know which SMG is best suited for each role and the best specialization path for each one. Also, do let me know what your top 3 SMGs are in the comments down below, and leave a like if you would like to see me make a similar video for other weapon types. So starting off with number 3, I've gone for the Suomi KP31. Prior to 5.2, it was clearly the best SMG in terms of just raw TTK, and nothing really came close to it. However, the latest patch massively nerfed the damage over range, essentially limiting it to shotgun range. But surprisingly, it still kept a bit of its lethality in extreme close quarters. The Suomi is still the best performing SMG within 8 meters when you're up close and personal. So you won't find it difficult to shred players in close quarters, but once you're outside of that sweet spot range around 15 meters or so, it turns into a 7 bullet to kill SMG and starts to become really ineffective to a point where it becomes the worst SMG in a matter of 7 meters. Only the Thompson is worst off past 50 meters, and therefore I would only recommend using the Suomi on small infantry focused maps like Operation Underground and modes like Grind, where you can expect shorter engagement ranges on average. So overall, the Suomi should still be a go-to SMG for aggressive medics who tend to flank and like to take out multiple opponents in close proximity. For specializations, I've gone for quick aim, as it reduces the time to aim down sight by 33% and allows me to acquire my targets as quickly as possible. It's important you do the same if you're using a sight, because the 100 millisecond difference is vital in a slow TTK environment, especially when you're engaging with more than a single player. It's hard enough as it is to go head on against multiple opponents, so you don't want to stack the odds further against you by not reducing the ADS delay. The only exception would be if you're using iron sights, because the speed difference isn't as large. My next 2 specializations are custom stock and extended mags, simply because there's no other viable option. The 981 round per minute Suomi with a 20 round mag is far from viable when you take into account all the bullets to kill changes. Having to potentially use up to 50% of your magazine for a single kill is far from ideal. The only exception would be on smaller modes like Squad Conquest, where you're less likely to face multiple opponents at once. And for my last specialization, I went for Polished Action, which reduces the accuracy penalty in sustained hipfire. This is really important as you'll be relying on your hipfire in close quarters, and minimizing the spread would make your day a lot easier. Also, recoil buffer isn't really necessary because the Suomi received a 40% recoil reduction in 5.2, so unless you're still finding it hard to handle, I wouldn't really recommend it. Next up, I've gone for the EMP. Prior to the patch, it was probably the least used and least attractive SMG in the meta class. At the time, it just wasn't competitive enough and it had no clear role. However, 5.2 has changed all of that. It's now one of the most powerful SMGs in the game, mainly because it's managed to retain a bit of its previous damage model. The EMP's maximum damage stays unchanged, and as a result keeps its 4 bullet to kill range up to 10 meters. When you compare that to the faster firing SMGs, who all start off with 5 bullets to kill, then it's clear to see why it's a bit more competitive now. To be specific, the EMP outperforms the Thompson regardless of distance and outperforms the ZK 95% of the time. Only between 10 to 15 meters does the ZK outperform the EMP, which to be honest is too small of a niche to consider worth picking. The main point I'm trying to make is that the faster firing SMGs will need to land an extra 1, 2, 3 or more bullets depending on the distance, which plays a huge factor outside of the perfect environment where you're more likely to land 5 in a row than 7 in a row. This makes the EMP far less punishing, and on top of that, it also received a recoil buff, making it even easier to handle, thus further increasing the likelihood of landing all your shots and achieving the optimal TTK. You can even argue that the EMP performs better than the Suomi up close because there isn't much of a difference outside of the perfect setting. Overall, the EMP is a well-rounded SMG that can engage comfortably from most ranges without requiring a dozen bullets to kill. I highly recommend it, and you should give it a try if you're looking for an SMG that can do it all. For specializations, I've gone for quick aim to reduce the extra ADS delay you get from using a NIDAR sight. My second and third choices are enhanced grips and polished action to improve hipfire. Also, I do want to mention that the specs on the right hand side are as good if not better, but due to my personal preference I've decided to not increase my movement speed. And for my last pick, I've gone for recoil buffer over barrel bedding, as I'm often moving while firing, so I won't be stationary much. And for my final pick, I've gone for the MAB 38. Prior to the patch, it was a highly controllable 4 to 8 bullet to kill medium range SMG that was as effective in close quarters. However, it now adopts more of an AR SMG role, as DICE would like to call it. Basically, it's purely tailor-made for engagements past 11 meters, and the downside to that is that it starts off as a 5 bullet to kill instead of 4. So you will struggle to compete against all other SMGs within 10 meters. However, the small damage drop off over distance results in the MAB having a better TTK than any other SMG past 11 meters by quite a large margin. In fact, in the perfect setting 1v1, it beats the SMGs 1.5 from 0 to 75 meters, the Gewehr 1.5, the Bren, the Lewis gun, and many more. It's also my best performing SMG, so I highly recommend it to be your go-to medium range SMG that you can carry into any sized map without much concern. For specializations, I went for high velocity bullets, which increases the bullet speed by a further 60%, making it easier to land on moving targets and fully maximizes your range potential. My second and third specializations are polished action and extended mags, which is a must-have in my opinion, otherwise you'll just end up with an MP34. Also, there's no need to reduce the recoil as it received a horizontal recoil reduction in 5.2. And for my last specialization, I went for custom stock, and that reduces the spread while moving. And that's it really. Those are my top 3 SMGs in the meta class, and I would love to know what you guys think of my choices. Don't forget to share your top 3 as well. Feel free to leave a rating, and I'll see you later. Take care.